our movement. And Maharaj has been working on several fields, but he's also pioneering in deity worship. Animal ethics, cow care is the book we heard about yesterday. And also yesterday we learned about the upcoming book, Yoga and Animal Ethics. And Maharaj mentioned that his cow care book is already there for our free download. So please go ahead and check it out. And today we have the great fortune, now that Maharaj is here after several years, we have the great fortune to take utmost advantage and ask questions. And it is said that the ultimate sweetest knowledge of Bhakti resides in the heart of a Vaishnava. So please take this opportunity and ask questions. And do not hesitate, you can just raise your hands and ask questions. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Don't ask any questions yet. Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare
Hari Bol, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Bhakti Vaishnavrinda ki jai, Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai, Shri Shri Jagannath Subhadra Baladeva ki jai, Gaura Premanande. Someone is sneaking up with a dangerous weapon in the hand. Maybe we can use the tabletop.
Would you like to say something before we start?
Yeah, I'll say something. I remember many years ago we were having annual retreat camps in Croatia and Serbia, and they were very well attended. And His Holiness Satyananda Swami would be there, and he always liked to have one evening a question and answer session. And the way he would organize it is there would be what he called the magic question box. And so there would be a box in which you could insert your written question, and if you so chose, it could be anonymous. Because sometimes questions are a little touchy, and we may not want to identify ourselves as the person who asks the question. Although, I must say, there is a trick how you can ask a question without incriminating yourself. And that is, you say, some people say. Or a person might ask. So you're not committing yourself. You're just saying, yeah, I've heard this question. This question comes up. And that way you're kind of safe. But anyway, he used to have this box, and devotees had a lot of questions, and then there would be a few of us, the more senior devotees, the preachers, and somehow what sticks in my mind is one time, I think it was in Croatia, in one camp, the late His Holiness Bhakti Swami was there in the camp. And I just remember somebody asked about how to stop, how to overcome the habit of watching television. And Bhakti Swami's answer was, just throw out the television. What's the problem? And everyone thought that was so hilarious. I know, it was just the way he said it. Just throw it out. Throw it out the window. Yeah. That's the one question and answer I remember from all of those sessions. What else? Well, I would have one maybe show and tell and another possibly tell. But I wanted to ask Krishna Premarupa Prabhu, have you shared with the devotees anything about the Hermeneutics course which you took?
No.
Shall I say something about that? Because I think that could be relevant to this subject.
Sure, yes.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that the governing body of our society is called the Governing Body Commission, GBC, has a group which is called the Shastra Advisory Council. And this is a group of devotees. How many are there now? I think there's altogether around 14 or so devotees. And this Shastra Advisory Council gets occasionally a question from the GBC. Please research this or that specific topic and tell us, write up your conclusions from it. And so over the years they have done this function. And some of these projects that they get take a long time to research, and one that's been taking some of the longest time resulted in the creation of a whole course. Because the question that they initially got, I don't remember the wording, but it had to do with questions of how to interpret some statements by our founder Acharya. Some statements being controversial, some being perhaps ambiguous, some being even strange. And to reconcile, this word reconcile, to bring into harmony some statements of Srila Prabhupada with our own experience, or there can be many issues that come up. And so that issue, that question went to initially before this Shastra Advisory Council, it went to a small group. I think there were 5 senior devotees, and they discussed. They had meetings over a 3-year period, and they wrote a paper, 70 pages long, and then the GBC, they're very busy, so to read a 70-page paper, maybe a few of the GBC read and the rest did not. But the issue was still there, and so then it was all given to the Shastra Advisory Council. And the Shastra Advisory Council, after a lot of discussion, decided really that the thing is, what's needed is a course. And the idea of the course is to help us develop a culture of discussing and understanding Shastra, to sort of get away from, for example, I may have an opinion of what to do or what to understand from Shastra, and I have my little collection of quotes. I can quote Prabhupada. He says this, and this. You see? And then another devotee who has a different idea says, yes, but Prabhupada says this, and this. Right? And so it becomes, sort of like throwing some weapon, in the air, back and forth, and nothing is really concluded. So this over a long time, this course was developed, and the course itself became controversial. That's a long story, but some devotees don't even like that we use the term hermeneutics. What is hermeneutics? Most of us never heard of this. Hermeneutics just means the process of and the analysis of how we interpret, especially how we interpret Shastra. And there's a whole area of philosophy called philosophical hermeneutics. In any case, we put together, I'm part of the SAC, we call it the SAC for short. But I'm on the outer periphery. I'm not in the core group, but in the consulting group, or I forget what we're called. I thought it might be interesting to give a very brief sketch of this, and I'll try not to take too much time because I know you have lots of questions, or maybe not. Rancho has lots of questions, right? A few. So there's a handbook, and the handbook is, how many pages altogether? It is almost 300. Yeah, it's 284 pages. Single spaced. So there's a lot here. And what we worked out is a process where you have an issue, and what do we do with it? Here's a quote, and how do we understand this? So we approach it through essentially 3 processes. One is to examine the statement in terms of, or in relation to, principles And the principles that we identified are 24 in number. 24 principles. So as an example, the first principle goes like this. Sri Krishna is the object, the purpose, and the ultimate goal of all Shastric knowledge. That's, kind of a simple, straightforward statement. So then you can take some statement in Shastra, and with this principle you can start to think, okay, how is this statement helping me to understand that Krishna is the object and purpose and ultimate goal of this knowledge. And each of these 24 principles has some explanation with quotes, with references from Shastra, from Srila Prabhupada's books, from his purports especially. So, for example, quoting a verse many of you are familiar with from Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says in chapter 15, I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. By all the Vedas, I am to be known. Indeed, I am the compiler of Vedanta, and I am the knower of the Vedas. So there, Krishna himself is declaring what is said in this principle, in this first principle. The second principle, I won't go through all of it, but the second one is Shabda is the highest pramana. Pramana means source of evidence. And then there's evidence for why Shabda, that is testimonial or word, Shastric word or revealed scripture, why that is the highest evidence. And so on and so forth. Okay, then we have a section of analyzing 6 devotional qualities for doing this practice of interpretation. And the basic question for the devotee who wants to interpret Shastra is, am I qualified to do it? What makes me think that I'm qualified to understand what I'm reading or what I'm hearing? And there are 6 of these qualities that we want to sort of make sure that we have. First is humility and service mode. Fidelity to the text and the tradition is the second. A discerning search for the truth is a third. Honest and authentic conversation is a fourth. Openness to change and transformation is a fifth. And finally, benevolence and generosity is the sixth. So we understand if these are not there, there could be problems. It could be blocking our understanding. And then, on top of these 2 things, qualities and principles and devotional qualities, third thing is, third sort of aid for the whole thing are what we call tools. Tools are when you have to fix some mechanical device, then you need to have the right tools. You may have to loosen and tighten some screws, so you need a screwdriver, and so on. You have to have the right tools for each process. And if you don't have, then that can be a problem. So if I have a broken mixer, for making vegetable soup, and it's broken. If I take a hammer to it, maybe that's not going to help. Just to make a gross example. So we identified several tools, not one, not two, not 10, but 40 different tools. And these are all essentially in the form of questions. For example, the first question, the first tool is the question, how does this statement of Shastra, by which we mean Sadhu, Shastra, and Guru, all three together, we're including as Shastra. How does this statement point to Krishna? How does it point to Krishna? And then we give a short explanation of a method. Ask how the statement helps people to know, serve, and please Bhagavan, Sri Krishna, and his associates, and explain it in that light. This method can also be used to harmonize statements by showing how each ultimately points toward Krishna. And then we have evidence for each tool also. So there are 40 of these tools. The second one is considering the pramanas, the sources of authority. The third is seeking guidance from Shastra itself through instruction or identifying precedent. And there's so many more, 40 of them. So that's just to let you know, has been a lot of thinking that's gone into this, and this has been developed into a course. Initially, there's just an introductory course which goes over 8 sessions, I believe, of 1.5 or 2 hours each, and it's been online. And yes, Krishna Prema-rupa, what do you think? Was it a good thing? Good presentation? Yeah. You took the course.
You gave a nice summary of the main ideas, and I can suggest it's really a helpful course to take.
Yeah, so I just, for now, just wanted to, call your awareness that such a thing exists. It's kind of still in process, being developed. There will eventually, the idea is to have level 1, level 2, level 3. So if you're into these sorts of things, that's something to look out for. And I wanted to also share this. The ISKCON Communications Journal. This is also controversial. If it's not controversial, it's not very interesting. Yeah, that's right. ISKCON Communications Journal was running for several years ago, and then it sort of fizzled out, and for a period of something like 15 years it didn't exist, and now for the second year it's revived. And ISKCON Communications Journal is now a peer-reviewed journal. For those of you who were here yesterday, I explained what that means. So it's like an academic journal, and its purpose is to reach people in the academic world, but also in journalists, or possibly in the political government area, administration, that sort of thing, to show that we're something more than just chanting Hare Krishna on the street, and distributing books, although we do consider these our most essential activities as far as preaching goes. But we also reflect on our tradition. And this is what the articles in this journal are doing. There's only one issue per year for now. Earlier it was 2, sometimes even 3, but now it's 1 per year. And it's available from Bhakti Vedanta Library Services. That's you can find online. They're in Belgium, across the street from Radhadesh. Examples of articles this time. This time, almost all the articles are by ISKCON devotees. In the past, they've had articles also by different people, scholars and other religion practitioners, and quite a variety. So, but this issue, first article is by Urmila Devi, The Application of Hermeneutics in ISKCON. She's telling about this course. And next is Hridayananda Das Goswami, Understanding Prabhupada, ISKCON's founder and exemplary teacher. So he's giving a careful analysis after decades of thinking about this himself, how to understand just how it is that Srila Prabhupada is the founder and exemplary teacher. How do we understand? There's another article with a similar aim from Professor Graham Schweig, better known amongst the devotees as Garuda Prabhu. It's called When the Master Speaks, Ways of Understanding Srila Prabhupada's Challenging Teachings and Form of Discourse. So he's giving his own ideas about how we may better understand. There's another, this I haven't looked at yet, from Joshua Green, better known amongst devotees as Yogeshwara Prabhu. Hitler and the Jews, Reflection on Controversial Remarks by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Yeah. Then there's a very nice article of theology by Dr. Rembert Lutya Harms, better known amongst devotees as Gopinath Acharya Prabhu. The Perfection of All Beauty and Joy, Gaudiya Vedantic Theology of Devotional Love. He is responding to what became controversial. It was a theological, or is a theological issue, and that is bhakti inherent? Is it already there in us, or is it inherited? Is it something from outside that is given to us by guru, by sadhus, by association? So the controversy has become a sort of either or, binary thing. And he shows with extensive referencing, especially from Srila Jiva Goswami, that this is actually, the whole question is wrongly conceived. We're thinking this or that. It's not, it's both and. But he gives a very careful analysis. There's another article by someone, I don't know who this is, R. David Coolidge, Dharma of Bhakti, Dharma of Mlechas, Muslim Engagement with Gaudiya Vaishnavism as a Living Tradition. This might be interesting for people from Tunisia. Yeah. Then the last article is Intellectual Engagement with Popular Culture. This is from Chaitanya Charan Prabhu from Mumbai. And then there are 3 book reviews. This is typical of an academic journal, book reviews. So there's a review of Gopinathacharya Prabhu's book, which is an amazing book. It was his doctoral dissertation, which he then revised over a period of 10 years before publishing it with Oxford University Press. The book is called A Vaishnava Poet in Early Modern Bengal, Kavi Karnapura's Splendor of Speech. So it's a study, a very careful study of the poetry of Kavi Karnapura. It's deep, it's good, it's really good. And Tattvavit Prabhu, you all know Tattvavit, he wrote a review of this book. There's another book review, someone, I'm not sure I know him, he wrote a book called Cow Care in Hindu Animal Ethics. Strange, yeah. So this book is reviewed by Yadunandana Swami. And a third book, you may not have heard, there's been recently a book written in America called Branding Bhakti, Krishna Consciousness and the Makeover of a Movement, by Nicole Karapanagiotis. And this is reviewed by Vineet Chander, better known among devotees as Venkata Bhatta in America. Right. Hare Krishna. That took longer than I intended. Sorry. Questions? Don't all speak at once.
We give you just for the sake of moderation, we can first maybe have one question each person, and in case the mic comes around, it's good. Thank you.
When I read Bhagavad Gita lately, I came across chapter 14, and Krishna says that every our actions are executed by the 3 gunas. So the question comes like, where comes the free will in?
Ah, the free will question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, the Bhagavad Gita is in part a rhetorical work. Rhetorical means it has a purpose of persuasion. And we can say on one level, that there can be several levels. On one level, it's Krishna persuading Arjuna to fight in the particular battle which they're standing in the middle of. And for that purpose, Krishna speaks very rhetorically, especially in the second chapter, verses 31 through 36 or so. Where he says, what kind of a kshatriya are you? If you lose your fame, it's going to be worse than death, and so on. And there are also statements, as you have mentioned, about the 3 modes of nature and the emphasis on our being subjected to the modes of nature, being entirely subjected to the modes of nature. I should be able to quote a verse at this point, but my brain isn't working very well, so I won't try. But Hare Krishna. But if we sort of zoom out and get the bigger picture of what Krishna is saying in the Bhagavad Gita, we understand the whole basis of his speaking Bhagavad Gita is the understanding that we do have choice. If there would be no choice, there would be no meaning to his speaking the Bhagavad Gita. It wouldn't make any sense. And he makes that explicit toward the end of the Gita when he says to Arjuna, so I've explained everything to you, now you decide what you're going to do. Now the degree of freedom to make choice, that is very much, we understand, a function of the degree of how much we are sunk in lower or higher modes. So if we are in the grip of the mode of ignorance, our freedom of choice is minimal. And where the mode of Rajaguna is there, there's greater choice. But that greater choice in the mode of passion, for example, a business person may be able to make choices about he or how she or he are going to do business. But that person may not be able to think outside that box. They'll only be able to think in terms of what can I do to make profit. So that's the case for all the modes of nature, but especially the lower we go, the lower we are in the mode of ignorance, the less freedom we have. And the more we are in the mode of goodness, sattva, the more clear. Sattva can mean goodness, it can mean clarity, felicity, we say in English, in which when we see, when we have more power to see, then we can more easily make good choice. Just like if the room is completely dark, we may stumble around, but if we turn on the lights, then we can move carefully, appropriately, and we can choose where to move nicely. Yeah. So the Gita, in that context, is talking Sankhya, and Sankhya is, there's a lot of Sankhya in the Bhagavad Gita, but it's devotional Sankhya, and we get a lot more of it in third canto Bhagavatam. But this emphasis within Sankhya is that as long as one is under the control of modes of nature, the less freedom one has. And it is possible to become free, and that's the purpose of Sankhya, is to analyze. Sankhya means counting. It's to analyze the dynamics of material nature so that I can make better choices. Okay. So don't worry. You're not a robot.
We
Krishna preveroval.
Hare Krishna. Actually, a devotee sent me a message with a question for you. She's not able to participate, but she's watching.
We are being watched.
Yes. So the question is, humble basis. Yeah. How important is it for a devotee to live his or her personal dharma? A personal dharma includes often many years of studying or learning and brings obligation in this world. Is this not an entanglement? Is it not enough for a devotee just to take up to devotional service? Or is it on the contrary the best devotional service to dedicate his or her personal dharma in the service of the Lord? Thank you very much for your answer. Your servant Radha Govinda Dasi.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Good. So the question is about what may be technically called swadharma. And in Dharma literature, swadharma usually means what is your varna? It ends up being putting you into a sort of broad category. What I have reflected on in recent years is what happens when we consider it more literally. Swadharma means your unique dharma. If we understand that each of us have a unique relationship with the Lord, and unique means there's only one. Sometimes you hear people saying, oh, that's very unique. No, either something's unique or it's not. It's not sort of unique. It's either unique or it's not. So it's unique. We are unique. We are there's only one of us. And so it makes sense to me that we have a unique swadharma, which is our very special, that which is ultimately opening us to realize our unique relation with the Lord. So, but the question is, should we go with that, or should we kind of just surrender to Krishna? And perhaps a way to express that is something Srila Prabhupada would say, actually quoting his Guru Maharaj, do the needful. And temple managers love to quote this. Prabhu, just do the needful. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, right? I think what we're looking for is something in the middle. Wherever we have an institution which is, trying to move in a general single direction to accomplish something, to move the mission of Lord Chaitanya forward, then especially with respect to that, we may need to lean more toward doing the needful. But we may also find that in doing that, what comes out is also our swadharma. We find Krishna opens up a particular way that we can do a service, which turns out to be also doing the needful, and then that can be very nice. One thing I've found since years helpful in my understanding of relation of individual with institution is a little scheme that maybe you've heard before from His Holiness Kadamba Swami, that we can think of our society as having 3 levels or 3 dimensions or 3 floors. On the ground floor, we have the functioning of the society, where we have all of the physical aspects, including temples and the managerial structures for this to function, and the economic considerations, and all of those things. There's so many considerations to keep things moving. So that's one level. Then a second level is our individual and collective sadhana. And this second level is linked to the first level, but it can be somewhat not dependent on this first level. In other words, everybody can practice sadhana. Everyone can chant Hare Krishna, whatever the situation is. Everyone can associate with others who are engaged in devotional service, no matter what. However, the institution is also facilitating by having a nice place to gather, for example, and so on, in Krishna's Lord Jagannath's temple. Then there's a third dimension, and the way Maharaj described it once, he said it is Lord Chaitanya spreading the Sankirtan movement all over the universe, whether or not we are assisting. In other words, it's going on, it will go on, whatever we do or don't do, because it's Lord Chaitanya and He wants it to happen. We can be part of it, so as an institution we engage in the mission of Lord Chaitanya. And so Srila Prabhupada emphasized the publication of books and the distribution of kirtan and prasadam, and so on. So all of these dimensions are there. Sometimes one is more the area of focus, and sometimes it's another. And sometimes we may feel there may be considerable challenges on the ground floor. Why? Because it's the one which is most, we say in English, it's where the rubber hits the road. There's the material energy, and there's always friction. There's always friction with the material energy. And we're trying to rise above material energy, but it's there. We can't ignore it. So there are challenges, and unfortunately, some devotees perceive ISKCON as being nothing other than the ground floor. And then when they see some difficulties, they become disappointed, and they may give up. They give up the association of devotees, which means they give up the sadhana dimension. What to speak of the universal mission. But that's a mistake. If we see the bigger picture, then we can always stay inspired, and we can engage our swadharma, and we can do the needful, and there will be a happy balance, because we will have a healthy vision of where we are in that. We are achintya veda veda. We are simultaneously, inconceivably part and individual. We are part of a bigger mission, and we remain. We preserve our individuality. That can never be taken away from us. We are who we are. We're not giving up our individuality. I hope not. Is that okay?
For me, yes.
Microphone.
It's kind of on the topic of this one. So we mentioned how the individual might relate to these three aspects of ISKCON. I'm thinking about the other direction, where a devotee has experience of devotional service, experience of Krishna, and then has a challenge, and he might not be able to do what's expected usually. Maybe there's some problem with principles, maybe there's a problem with sadhana, like that. And then there might be like this devotee might think that I'm Hare Krishna Jai Muridhar Prabhu Ki Jai Nankoti Vaishnava Ki Jai.
We're just having a Stump the Swami session.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are they succeeding so far?
Huh?
Are they succeeding?
No, the Stump the Swami is, are they succeeding?
Yeah.
So far, I'm still on the seat. Yes, please continue.
Yes, so this question is more how a devotee treats himself and how he might feel guilty, shameful, that he is not up to the standard, and how he feels that he's not anymore qualified to be a devotee.
Okay.
And yes, so this is kind of a relationship of a devotee towards himself. And yeah, it's just, what would you say to such a devotee?
First thing I'd say is, don't give up so easily. It's not about you feeling bad about yourself. That's not going to help. You may not be able to follow things at the speed that you initially were trying, but that doesn't mean you can't still go in the right direction. There's, I think, here a problem of another kind of duality thinking, and that is success versus failure. All or nothing. And it's understandable because we do have quite a narrow, we're like a funnel, you know, a funnel has a wide opening and a very narrow spout. And so our mission is like this. We're like, come on everybody, join the party, and then get into this funnel and okay, now you better throw that out and give yourself to this. And now if you want to pass through this narrow passageway. And if you can't, back out you go. And that's part of the dynamic of our society in its efforts, understandable efforts, to do what all societies do, which is to establish boundaries. Sociologists talk about this all the time, that societies are always establishing their boundaries, who's in and who's out. And we have a kind of inbuilt challenge because on one side everybody is in, and on another side pretty much everybody is out. And that's that can be very confusing for an individual. Then we have to sort of help them back up and say, okay, it's a good thing, I want to progress in spiritual life. Now let's see at what pace I can do it realistically. And is there support for me to do that? And that idea of support, that's part of our challenge too. As an institution, if we're making these boundaries and we're kind of, you're either in or you're out, and sometimes because of the nature of societies, sometimes one has to do that. One has to say, well, you're in, but no, sorry. You're not in, but you could be in if you would do X, Y, and Z. So that's a constant kind of negotiation. This binary of success and failure, I've been thinking about this because Srila Prabhupada used the word success many times. I forgot the number, I looked it up, but I think a few thousand times it comes up in the database. And the word failure comes also, but not so much. But I'm gradually preparing a presentation on this subject only. How do we deal with this this binary of success and failure, and how can we essentially help devotees understand there's a way to go beyond this sort of paranoia and be on track, whether it's a slower track or a faster track. May not be necessarily the issue so much as being on track.
Danke.
Danke, bitte. Bitte schön.
My question is about challenge. So it is said about challenge.
Challenge.
So it is said that if we want to advance in Krishna consciousness, there will be challenges which make us stronger, and this gives us improvements. There is also the other case that if our mood or attitude is not correct, there will also appear impediments. So how do I know when challenge is coming that actually I'm doing the correct thing, I just continue and this makes me stronger? Or how do I know maybe this challenge is appearing because my mood is wrong, I have to change something?
Well, you can ask people, you can ask devotees. You can ask someone that you feel you can confide in, that we talked about in the Bhakti Shastri course 3 days ago. Dadati pratigrinati guhyam akyati prichati. So this guhyam akyati is telling in confidence, and prichati means asking. So we ask, because there's countless situations we find ourselves in, And this question can naturally come up. Am I on track here, or what is actually going on with me, and so on. And sometimes it just helps to verbalize, to say something to one other devotee, and you don't even need to hear what they say. Just having said, it becomes more clear to you what's the way to go. Another thing I often encourage is just writing, where you are writing for yourself only. It's for your eyes only. Especially when you have a decision to make. Take a piece of paper, put a vertical line down the middle, and put the pros on one side and the cons on the other. If I do this, it'll be like this. If I do like that, it'll be like that. And you go back and forth, and this way you can sort of, you're shaking out all this that's going on in your mind and putting it on paper, and that can help you to get clear what it is that you need to do. That's a technique you can do. You try.
My question, I would put as a continuation of a question of Nanda Kumar Prabhu, and also the previous one, a 3-layer model. And it is, we are very much concerned about in and out, as you explained. Mm-hmm. But Srila Prabhupada said several times, I can quote only Science of Self-Realization, but he said several times, everybody can chant, sing holy name, even Muslims, Christians, Buddhists, everybody.
Yeah.
So how that can work? Yeah?
How it can work?
Yeah, I can see even some devotees going back to Christianity, and they are kind of balancing, I'm a little bit Christian, a little bit devotee, and what is now most important, being within this society, or being singing, chanting holy name.
Well, let's start with Shastra, and let's start with Upadeshamrita, verse number 5. Krishneti yasya giritam manasadriyeta. That one who is chanting Krishna's name, Krishna iti. So the iti works like quotation marks in Sanskrit, usually, or thus. So Krishneti yasya giritam manasa adriyeta. This is not the imperative form, adriyeta. This is the optative form, which is a kind of soft imperative, but it can sometimes be also a more hard imperative. And so it's saying you should, adriyeta, you should respect. How to respect? Manasa, in the mind. Or with the mind. So you should mentally respect anyone who is chanting Hare Krishna. That's Rupa Goswami. And then Diksha asti. Diksha asti ched pranativischa vajantam isham. Someone who has received formal initiation. That's where the commitment to the funnel comes. Right? Huh?
Such a good picture.
Yeah. It's like do I really want to go into this funnel? I don't know if that's the best analogy, but what comes to my mind. And of course, the way things are nowadays, many persons make that commitment, but then after some time find that actually I can't keep that. It's interesting. I mean, it's just maybe a curiosity, but we have this. You know, when you take initiation, it's a permanent vow. It's forever. It's for the rest of my life. In at least some Buddhist traditions, and possibly Jain traditions, they have, well, you can say also in Vaishnava tradition, the original idea of Diksha was that you were initiated into a function which, usually a ritual, a yajna ritual, which would go for a certain amount of time, and when the ritual was over, the Diksha was over. And then that, in the Pancharatra system, became the permanent initiation. But in Buddhist traditions, you can take a vow for a certain period of time. And if you decide, you know, I can't follow this vow now because whatever reasons, you can set aside the vow, and it's not a problem. It's not a social issue. It's okay. You can set it aside. But there's some sort of formal, you know, putting aside or ending the vow. And in our society, it's more like, well, I can't really do that, or I don't really want to do that, and so I'm not doing it, and so I'm not really, where am I now? I'm not in, I'm not out, maybe I'm out. Today I feel more out than in. Where am I, you know? That's, maybe we should institute temporary vows. We'll have to ask the deity worship minister what he thinks of that.
That's what you're temporarily vowing to do.
Ah, okay. So, yeah, that's all I'll say on that topic for now. Luke, oh, yes. Please.
Maharaj, I would like to ask about how is it possible that bhakti can coexist with material attachment? Like someone can be on a high stage of bhakti, but at the same time have strong material desires.
How is it possible? Yeah, we were talking about this. We are Tatastha Shakti. There's Antaranga Shakti, there's Bahiranga Shakti, and there's Tatastha Shakti. And guess what? You are in, or part of, or manifestation of Tatastha Shakti. That means you are neither here nor there. We're in between. In between. And our excuse me, our aim, of course, is to turn entirely to the spiritual energy, Antaranga, Krishna's internal pose, and to be fully sheltered in that potency. However, we are always Tatastha Shakti. We are always of that category, that tattva. And so that tension is always there. Another point maybe helpful is Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur speaks of different aspects of anishtata bhakti. Nishta means, Prabhupada would say, fixed. Adoshadha tata sadhu sangota tato varunakriya tato vanatan vritti satato nishta, which is tata. Nishta, in Croatian language, nishta means nothing. But in Sanskrit it means standing down, it means fixed. So, but he explains, there's anishtata. He gives 6 sorts of anishtata bhakti. There's utsahamayi, which means overconfidence. Thinking, yeah, I can do this. Yeah, Maya, hey, no problem for me. That's utsahamayi. Then there's ghana tarala, which means literally thick and thin, which means like today I'm fired up and tomorrow don't call me. And there's vishaya sangara, inability to manage one's senses. Vyuda vikalpa is being indecisive. Should I be a brahmachari or should I be a grihastha? Like that, there's 6. And the last one is taranga rangini, literally enjoying the waves. Enjoying the waves. In other words, as a result of bhakti, some good things come, some things that are enjoyable. And then to get attached to those good things, it may be in the form of some anerkennung, some recognition. It may be something more subtle, it may be something more gross. Being then diverted by that and seeing that as the goal of devotion, that's going to be a problem. Enjoying the waves. So this could be also what's could be relevant to what you're speaking about, I think. Yes or no? Maybe.
I don't know, maybe it's too early to go all the way back, close the circle, but I want to come back to hermeneutics, because I have these questions on Bhagavad Gita as it is. Something you cannot really say nowadays, right? Like, because it's very black and white, it's very absolute. So I was just wondering, how do you deal with that in the academic area that you're in? Because also, for example, for preaching reasons, dealing with academic people or so-called intelligent people, they will struggle to accept this. And also, how can we kind of defend Srila Prabhupada's commentary from others, against others who are more literal, or who are more as it is in other ways, maybe in literal translation.
Even more as it is. That's an interesting one. Stump the Swami. My way of explaining the phrase as it is that Prabhupada is emphasizing that the hermeneutic principle that he follows in his presentation of the Gita is that the mood of Arjuna needs to be taken seriously, as the student, the follower, the disciple of Krishna, and that one should aim to be in a similar mood as Arjuna, where Arjuna is declared by Krishna to be his friend and his devotee, and who declares in the 10th canto, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavan, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam Vibhum. You, Krishna, are the Supreme Brahman, etc. He makes a very clear, straightforward declaration, unambiguous. So that's Prabhupada's hermeneutic principle, and the way he expresses that, he wants to emphasize that this is the way we're reading Gita, is he ties it right in, he builds it into the title of his book, Bhagavad Gita as it is. There's some scholar some years later came out with a Bhagavad Gita called Bhagavad Gita as it was. Such rascals. And he makes some sort of philological argument that the Bhagavad Gita was originally much shorter and it was only focused on Sankhya. There's another scholar I know, nice person, but he argues that the original Bhagavad Gita consists of only the Tristu verses. And everything else was added later. Hare Krishna. He says he has full appreciation of the Gita as it now is. He says it's wonderful, but from an Indologist point of view, he feels it's necessary to say that. So as Prabhupada identifies himself as, of course, a follower of his guru, he identifies himself in a disciplic succession of teachers of the Gita, representing Krishna. That's how he sees himself, and therefore that's his hermeneutic principle. And we can say, well, Prabhupada is speaking of, you said there may be another Gita, a translation that's even more as it is in terms of how it's translated. Maybe it's more literal and so on. Prabhupada once said to his editor, one of his first editors, Hayagriva Prabhu, he said, don't worry about the translations of the verses so much. That's not so important, because the different translations that are out there of the Bhagavad Gita, they're more or less okay. What's important, he said, are my purports. He wanted that his purports would be clear to emphasize this as it is feature. In which Prabhupada also explains, where does he explain? In the introduction, maybe? He's actually following the Guru Parampara because he's following Baladev Vidyabhushana, his commentary. He is specifically, rather than saying, oh, the Bhagavad Gita is about karma yoga and jnana yoga and dhyana yoga and sankhya yoga. No, the Bhagavad Gita, the whole Bhagavad Gita is about bhakti yoga. That comes from Baladev Vidyabhushana. So And Prabhupada is following that, so he's taking every opportunity to highlight, this is about surrender to Krishna, even when it doesn't seem to be there. And scholars may take issue with ways somehow a word or a phrase or a verse is translated. And, yes, you can quibble over how to translate. One time I was in the India Institute Library in Oxford University. They have a separate, or they used to have a separate library, and I found the section where they have all the different Bhagavad Gita translations. Prabhupada mentions in this introduction there are some 600. Well, I didn't find that many. I found I didn't look in the catalog, but I just counted what I saw on the shelf, and there were 250 or so. That was a few years ago. Since then, there have been a lot more translations, and everyone seems to feel they need to give it a shot, let's say. You don't count unless you've done a Bhagavad Gita translation. So that's okay, because the Bhagavad Gita it's poetry. That's something we forget. It's all poetry, and poetry is very challenging to translate poetry. You can be more literal, or you can be more poetic, or try to find a middle, and that's a choice.
Just to clarify, so when challenged on this point, you suggest that we can say as it is in terms of the hermeneutical principle of how Arjuna understood it. Like that's a kind of narrowing it down of the as it is.
I think that's generally that may be the way to go to respond. Say this is being expressed as the hermeneutic principle for how this Gita edition is presented. Yeah. Yes.
Maharaj, I've got a question about avatars, incarnations.
Uh-oh, here comes the one that stumps the Swami.
Well, it stumped me, I can't figure it out. Krishna has his Swayam form and Swayam Prakash. And the more I research it, the more I find there's a lot of differing opinions on it. Mm-hmm. Some are feeling that the Swayam Prakash is the way the Lord expands the Swayam Prakash to manifest all these different pastimes. Seems Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur states the Swayam Prakash as Balaram, which seems to be consistent with Adi 5. A little bit sort of not clear on that. And the Vaibhav and the Vilasta, they come from the Swayam Rupa, they come from the Swayam Prakash, they come from both. Do you know anything about it? I mean, the more I read the Laghu Bhagavatamrita and the Chaitanya Chamrita, the more confused I got. It's kind of like trying to figure out what's okay on a Codice and what's not.
When in doubt, wait for revelation.
I've been waiting a while.
Many years ago I got sort of into that. It was before there were any translations of the Laghu Bhagavatamrita. So I was just going by Chaitanya Charitamrita, and I decided, I'll make a chart.
Yeah, I said that too.
So I got a big piece of paper and I started making the notes, and at some point it's like you said, it's like, wait a minute. Wait a minute, is this from there? Is this from, how does that work?
And then where does Tadikatma Rupa fit into it?
Yes, so my answer is, when you figure it out, let me know.
But I mean, in one sense, I kind of, I mean, obviously it requires transcendental realization. It's not something I figure out just by, dots on a chart. But then I was listening to Ravindra Swarupa's Param Satyam series of lectures yesterday, and he was talking about, like, ultimately, so Krishna's just one person.
Yeah.
So it seems like sometimes you'll manifest this way, sometimes you'll manifest that way. And it's not like there's any difference.
Right.
But trying to put it into a chart or a diagram or whatever to explain it, not easy.
Yeah, I think part of the problem is that our mentality is that we want it to be clear-cut, when in fact it's not meant to be entirely clear-cut. The terminologies are there to help us understand that there are differences at the same time that there's non-difference. And here's one way of expressing that difference. And from a different angle, it might be expressed in yet a different way, if that makes any sense.
Thank you, Maharaj. So my question is related to suffering and surrender. So when it comes to our personal suffering, we always have this margin to act and alleviate that suffering. However, when it comes to collective suffering, I felt that we have very little influence on that, like either old age or sickness or wars or... so my question is that how can we witness that collective suffering and accept it in the heart and surrender to the will of Krishna?
Ooh.
Thank you.
Interesting how you put it. Yeah, there's something they call compassion fatigue. Have you heard of that? That you read the news and it's never good news, and it's about how many people got killed today here, and how many got killed there, and how many died from this, and on and on and on. And you sort of become callous. You read it and you go, yeah, it's just another day on planet Earth. And we hear on the other side that the Vaishnava, the devotee, is paradukkaduki, one who is feeling the dukkha, the pain of others. Para means others, so paradukkha. Another's dukkha. Dukhi, the word dukhi works like the word yogi in Sanskrit. There's yoga and there's the yogi. It's a long I in the nominative. Anyway, so the devotee is a dukhi with respect to paradukkha, the suffering of others. And then, but your question is, it's well put. What can we, how do we relate to the reality that there really isn't anything we can do about so much suffering that goes on? We could make long lists of the sorts of suffering that are going on and expanding on this planet as we speak. But they can be also boiled down to 4 sorts of suffering. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, and Vyadhi. And so Krishna says in the Gita, Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosha, Anudarshanam. Darshana, we know, we come for the temple darshana, seeing the Lord. Anudarshana means ongoing seeing or ongoing being aware of. So, dukkha dosha, the fault, dosha, the fault of material existence. recognizing this is the fault of material existence. Janma mrityu jara vyadi dukkha doshana darshanam. And that recognition, when it's deep, evokes deep compassion. I think it was Shruta Kirti Prabhu, but I'm not sure. It was in any case one of Prabhupada's personal servants. I believe it was after Ratha Yatra in London, and devotees were driving with Srila Prabhupada back to the temple down Oxford Street. And it was, Oxford Street is one of the main streets of London. It's where thousands, all the tourists go there, and everyone's shopping. And, it's this kind of mood of here we are and we're enjoying and we're very busy seeing all the opportunities for enjoyment. So they're going down this driving down the street, and Prabhupada's servant notices that Prabhupada has tears in his eyes. And he ventures to ask Prabhupada what's happening, and Prabhupada says, all these people, they're suffering so much. He said, they don't even know it. He was feeling that way. And these people, apparently there were no problems, they were healthy, they were out and about, and they were shopping and so on. But he was crying for them. So then, even on that level where it seems someone is enjoying life, the devotee, like Srila Prabhupada, is seeing, he's seeing that these people who think they're enjoying today, tomorrow they're in the hospital, or whatever it is. So that's the sobriety of the Vaishnava culture. And we saw that very much in Srila Prabhupada, very, very sober. He would consider, his whole presence was very sober. It could be profoundly joyful and sober at the same time. So, I don't know if that addresses your question, but that's what I'm thinking right now.
Thank you very much.
Maybe we should call it a day.
First, there's just this one online question. Perhaps if you could please end with that, if you do not mind.
Yeah.
It's from Sanya. And her question is, in one of your classes on dialogical Vaishnavism, you are mentioning Confucius and his idea that if the interpersonal relationships would be proper, then everything would be balanced. Could you say something about Atmavan Manyate Jagat and its role in communication, conflict, and developing and maintaining proper relationships?
Atmanam Manyate Jagat, Prabhupada would quote that, the idea that the whole world is according to the way I think it is. It's a sort of, I think what it's saying is that we project onto the world our own understanding of how things are. But I missed, in the very beginning, she's quoting who?
Confucius. Yeah.
Oh, Confucius.
Yes.
And what was it he said?
She's actually mentioning how you cited his dialogue in your dialogical Vaishnavism. You cited the idea that interpersonal relationships would be, if interpersonal relationships would be proper, then everything would be balanced.
Yeah. So, how to get there? Well, in the case of Confucius, Kung Fu Tzu, or Kong Tzu, sorry, it's not Confucius, it's Kong Tzu. his idea especially was just this very classical Chinese idea of filial, what's usually translated as filial piety, where sort of everyone has their place in relation to others. You know your place. There's and it's always asymmetrical. So there's superiors and inferiors. There's the king and the subject. There's the father and the son. There's the older brother and the younger brother. There's 5 basic relationships. I don't remember everything. And so he's saying if those relationships are clarified, then balance can be obtained. I think that was his idea. What else? He also spoke about, was it him? One of those Chinese sages. Talked about the rectification of language. The rectification of language. That if we get the meanings of words right, then everything becomes clear. And there's a whole Indian philosophy called, they came to be called the grammarians, where they said, if we could just speak proper Sanskrit, we could be liberated. If we would just, because Sanskrit is such a language, it is the language of liberation, and all we have to do is speak it properly, and we will become liberated. There's a whole philosophy like that. But balance and relationships is, I think, what we're aiming for, and we're able to find balance in relationships. Well, let's put it this way, in terms of Swadharma. We're looking for our identity. The word dharma has 2 aspects. One is descriptive, and the other is prescriptive. Description means, who are you? So everyone is eternal servant of Krishna. Jivar Swarupohoy Krishna Nityadas. That's just what it is. It's describing. Then, what's the consequence of that? If that's the case, then what? You should serve Krishna. Then it becomes prescriptive. And all the rest is details. It's, okay, I'm a servant of Krishna, and I'm also in this particular body, I'm in this ashram, and I have these inclinations, so I'm maybe with this varna, and therefore I should do this and I should not do that. And then all of those sort of narrow down to what ideally is a clear understanding, again, based on Swadharma, our uniqueness. This is what I have to do. This is my calling. And when that's clear, then relationships will always be clear. Did that make any sense? Nanda Kumar, reassure me. Did that make any sense?
It's the right direction.
It's the right direction, thank you. You tried. You gave it a good try. Okay.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. So, on behalf of New Jagannath Puri and the College of Vedic Studies, we will extend our great gratitude to you for such personally relevant and multi-perspectival insights into every subject matter. His Holiness Krishna Kshetra Swami Maharaj ki,
Jai.
Prabhupada ki,
Jai.
the Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki.
Jai.
Thank you for your kind participation. It forces me to think.
And the devotees Maharaj will again be giving a lecture on Sunday, 12:45. So please do join us. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Tomorrow morning, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yes, so tomorrow there will be the first Scientific Saturday Bhagavatam class, where His Holiness will be participating together with Kanadi Prabhu, elaborating on the science of Krishna consciousness. So we're very much looking forward for this also.
Srila Prabhupada ki.
Jai.